Tell the truth now. Do
No!
you want to be a boy?
No,
How do you know?
because it's boring stuff and most of the boys play football and stuff.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So first of all, sorry for not uploading for a couple weeks. I have been working on something so special, so highly requested, and so awesome that's going to be launching at the end of this month that will hopefully make up for that. So stay tuned for that. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have gotten a few sneak peeks, so maybe go ahead and do that if you're curious. So I've noticed for the past 6 months that I have gotten an increasing amount of people requesting that I discuss this YouTube channel called the Saccone Joly channel. This is a family vlog YouTube channel, so a bit different than what I'm used to talking about here. I really have not paid a ton of attention to the family vlogging genre here on YouTube over the years. I've probably clicked on like less than 10 videos from any of these channels, with the exception of my good friend Jacqueline Glenn, who has a family vlog channel, and I think she does it so well, and her videos are so cute with her husband and her new baby. So go check them out if you haven't. But I know that family vlogging is a genre that is quite controversial, coming from this controversy over here. Even though I'm not really tuned into that world, I do know that there is a huge amount of people who think that family vlogging as a concept and as a genre here on YouTube is exploitative, wrong, immoral, and often there are conversations brought up about consent and do these kids really know what they're getting into. Really, these same arguments can be made about child stars in the 90s and the early 2000s, more traditional celebrities and kids who were in the entertainment industry at a young age. And I don't know, I think with any sort of content, there's a right and wrong way to do it, and the channel we're talking about today, the Saccone Jolys, it's the wrong way. So I finally gave into the borderline harassment and I instantly saw exactly why you guys want me to talk about this. This is really disturbing, you guys. The Saccone Joly family has a father in these videos that came out as trans. Shortly after that, the child came out as trans, and this child is currently being used for clickbait, for honestly really off-putting videos, and it really feels extremely exploitative, and it feels like some Munchausen by proxy going on, that the dad comes out and then the 7-year-old kid comes out. I'm not going to be putting this kid's face on camera, because how the fuck can I sit here and accuse these people of exploiting this kid and then I go put the kid's face on my channel? Not happening. Basically, this all started with the father coming out in a really creepy video, just to put it bluntly. The video was extremely vague. It completely lacked any of these sort of hallmarks of someone who is truly trans and truly struggling with gender dysphoria from a young age until now. Like, I'm pretty familiar with the trademarks and sort of like, yes, this is a common narrative. This is what people typically feel when they suppress these feelings forever. I didn't really see any of that in the video. In fact, he really just spoke of having emotional problems as a kid that in no way even sounded like trans problems. He talked about having imaginary friends as if that somehow means you're trans. Like, what?
So I created my own world, and I lived in that world. The friendships and connections that were lacking in the real world were in abundance in my fantasy world. And amongst the many invisible friends I met over the years, one in particular stands out.
It just felt like a lot of weird pontification, and overall it was very much, in my opinion, because I'm allowed to have this opinion, complete clickbait. It was full of like sad backtrack music. It was just, it's trendy to be trans, I'm gonna be trans. And of course, he came out as non-binary trans, and so there's no transition gonna be happening. How convenient. You can come out as trans, get all the attention and the accolades, or so he thought, without having to put any actual work in. You're not going to be transitioning. You're just a dad. You're just a man. He hawked his book at the end, and overall it was just very, very much clickbait. Like, it was not, he's not trans. Like, that's just my opinion.
So if you've ever needed a place to escape to, let me show you the world that saved me.
It's also important to state before we go on to the actual disturbing part of the story, which is the kid coming out as trans and I think being convinced and pushed into identifying as trans. It's important to state that the Saccone Jolys, even though I'm only becoming recently familiar with their content through you guys telling me to check them out, it seems as if they have a history of being accused of exploiting their kids, of being abusive towards their kids. That is their reputation, which we all know about reputations. They can be true, they can be false, but you might want to keep that in mind when going further in the story. Keep that in your peripheral. So the dad's out, and then suddenly they have a new intro card with all the kids having their pronouns shown. So immediately the entire family is participating in this gender ideology virtue signaling. The dad had to bring the entire family in it, of course. Everyone's participating now. Then, months later, there's a slew of videos having to do with one of their kids, a 7-year-old. suddenly being trans. Video after video, back to back to back, has this kid being used in these clickbait videos, gender reveals, name reveals, intimate information about this kid's, feelings of struggling with gender. There are also some pretty disturbing videos going around on TikTok of this kid and how basically the kid's being coached into certain answers. Their sibling actually kind of gave that away.
If we sent you somewhere to convince you you were a boy, or told you you had to change back to a boy, how would that make you feel?
You would never do that.
I know I would never do that. But how would you feel if there is some people that actually do want to do that to people?
It makes us sad.
How would that make you feel?
It makes I would be sad.
There's a video of the kid singing about pedophiles, which I don't know how that plays into all this, but it's actually very uncomfortable.
How would you feel in your heart of hearts if it became apparent that a paedophile or a sexual predator had been looking at your children, had been masturbating your children, for example?
It's such an odd question, because how would you, like, I don't know how you'd feel. Like, obviously is it a terrible thing? It's like,
there's videos of the dad talking about hate comments with the kid. Why would you ever even want to make your 7-year-old child aware that people are saying horrible things about them on the internet? What kind of father are you? And it definitely jumps over the line into exploitation. I don't think these are videos that are appropriate to be made about kids. In my opinion, this kid has no ability to consent to such personal, private, and potentially embarrassing information being shared about them on video to the worldwide internet. I sounded like some boomer right there, the worldwide internet. All of a sudden, this trans child is like the Beyonce of the family, and going by their Instagram, you would never even know they had other kids. Every post is with the trans kid. It is impossible for me to say through the internet if this kid is experiencing gender dysphoria, if this kid is genuinely trans. I will say what seems a lot more likely to me is some Munchausen by proxy stuff going on. The odds of a father and then a child both being transgender is astronomically low, statistically almost impossible. There's no evidence that gender dysphoria or being trans is something that is hereditary, that can be passed on, like some sort of, if the father has this disorder or this disease, so can the kid. There's no evidence of that. And for the kid to come out so soon after the dad, it's almost like, wow, it's as if kids emulate their parents. Let's just say the kid is a genuine example of a person who is experiencing gender dysphoria at a very young age to the extent that they will later in life decide to transition. Let's just say that. Let's just say the kid was not influenced by the dad at all. Let's take it off the table for the sake of argument, right? It's still a disgusting situation because the parents are still monetizing this journey that is not their choice to share. And the kid can in no way understand the ramifications of putting themselves out there to the internet, which is, let's just be honest, sometimes a really disgusting place, especially when it comes to topics like this. It's much more likely the kid is emulating the father, getting positive feedback from it, from the parents. This whole trans thing has clearly become the focal point of this entire family's life. Like, I remember when I was a kid, my dad was a football referee and a football coach for some time. And I remember being very young and being like, I want to be into football because my dad's into football. Look at me now. Clearly it wasn't real. It was me getting positive feedback by talking about football with my dad and having that connection with him. I feel like a similar thing is happening here. If you watch these videos, the kid's understanding of being a girl, and this is fed back to him by the parents, is liking girly things, not liking to get hurt.
Tell the truth now. Do
No!
you want to be a boy?
No,
How do you know?
because it's boring stuff, and most of the boys play football and stuff. I don't want to.
You don't want to play football?
Yeah, and I don't like getting hurt.
You don't like getting hurt
They
either?
scream when they get hurt,
Do they?
but not a sad scream. Like, they're really happy.
Oh.
Like, they just are really happy that they just achieved $1,000.
So, you're happy with how we treat you?
Yeah, but
See, what a decent father in that situation would do would say, okay, buddy, these are your feelings, but do you also know that you can be a girl and be a tomboy? Do you also know that you can be a boy and still like pink, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a girl? That's not what the dad is doing, because the dad is fucking irresponsible, and the dad's getting money and clicks off this story. He has a trans child. It's like a gold mine. Other people are picking up on this as well, saying the way Jonathan speaks about this is so hyper and excited. Ever think your child has picked up on that and played into it subconsciously because they get rewarded with your engagement every time they speak about wanting to be a girl and dressing like a girl? This is so twisted. And I completely agree. It's one thing to be neutral if you notice your child expressing gender abnormal behavior or struggling with their gender, and it's another to reward them actively for dressing and being like a girl, especially in these stereotypical ways that don't actually make you a girl. They just make you feminine. The amount of gay men that I have had in my life tell me that they like to dress up as girls, or they like the color pink, or they liked Barbies when they were a kid is staggering. It's an extremely common narrative among grown-ass gay men who are happy being grown-ass gay men who grew up and expressed themselves very similar to this, girly kid. There's also another side to this, that one of the things that I have learned from detransitioner stories is that one of the hardest part of detransitioning, other than the medical aspect of it obviously, is this aspect of going back on your word to your family and friends, of fighting so hard to get everyone to get on board with this decision to transition and live with the opposite gender, and struggling to get them on board with pronouns and with names and with just accepting you and seeing you that way, and then going back. So amplify that by putting your entire journey and story supposedly out to the internet, to millions of people. This family is really minimizing the window and the opportunity this kid may have to grow out of this and say, this wasn't really me, because this has become now the kid's identity, and this is how the internet knows this child. It's like this child is now supporting the family financially based on being trans, and they've put this child on this trajectory toward puberty blockers and hormones and surgery and living this life when that might not be the actual path. And they can say all they want that they'll be accepting if it goes the other way, but you see what's happening here. When I think of family vlogging done right, I think of like cute home videos of like a kid meeting Santa for the first time or riding a bike for the first time. And I understand people would even think that that is maybe too much. I get that there are people that are gonna have different feelings about family style videos, but I think there is a place for that type of content. I think you can do it right, you can do it with integrity, and you can do it in a way that's not gonna humiliate the kid long term. I think revealing things about your kids that are so personal and so intense at such a young age before they can even properly consent to it, or consent at all, mind you, is probably going to have a negative impact on their mental health long term. And actually, if you think about it, there's really a case study for this already. Look at Jazz Jennings. Jazz Jennings is known as pretty much the youngest trans kid, or was for a while. Jazz Jennings was put out there with interviews with Barbara Walters at an extremely young age, and expressed wanting to be a girl, and had her entire journey documented on reality television, basically. And what you see now from checking in on the show over the years, she's dealing with some really intense mental health issues. I feel incredibly bad for Jazz. And while it's impossible to say that it, is due to being exploited her entire life and put out there for money and for fame and to support her family financially, I would guess it has something to do with it, at least in part. With all that being said, I don't know what the solution here is. I'm not saying like this channel needs to be banned. I'm not saying, like, I don't know. Is that the best thing? Maybe. You guys tell me. I'm just saying that there's something incredibly toxic happening here. This child's being monetized and exploited, and it really is disgusting to me. That's it for this video, you guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, because I post on there way more than I do on here, so you have to follow those to keep up with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.